In the quiet village of Umidike, everyone knew Amina. Not because she came from a wealthy family. Not because she was related to powerful people. But because she was kind. At 21 years old, Amina had earned a reputation that many older people admired. Every morning before sunrise, she helped her widowed mother prepare food for the small roadside stall they owned. Afterward, she attended college classes in the nearby town. In the evenings, she tutored local children for free. People often said she had a bright future. Parents pointed at her whenever they wanted to inspire their daughters. Be hardworking like Amina. Be respectful like Amina. Be focused like Amina. The praise embarrassed her. But she always smiled politely. Despite their financial struggles, she remained optimistic. Her greatest dream was simple. She wanted to become a teacher. Not for money. Not for status. Because she believed education could change lives. Especially the lives of young girls who grew up believing their dreams were impossible. Whenever life became difficult, Amina reminded herself that better days were coming. She had no idea that her life was about to change forever. No idea that within a few months, the same people who praised her would begin whispering behind her back. No idea that her name would become the center of the biggest scandal the village had seen in years. For now, she was simply Amina. The girl everyone respected. The girl everyone trusted. The girl who believed her future was secure. Amina's mother, Mama Grace, had sacrificed everything for her daughter. After her husband died years earlier, life became extremely difficult. The family lost most of their income. Many people expected Mama Grace to remove Amina from school. But she refused. Instead, she worked longer hours. Sold food at local markets. Accepted extra jobs. And endured countless hardships. Every sacrifice had one purpose. Giving Amina opportunities she never had. Late at night, when the village was asleep, mother and daughter often sat together outside their small home. Talking. Laughing. Dreaming. Those moments were Mama Grace's favorite part of the day. One evening she looked at her daughter and smiled. One day, you will make this family proud. Amina laughed. I'm already trying. No. Mama Grace shook her head. I mean, one day the entire village will know your name. Neither of them realized how true those words would become. But not in the way they imagined. Not through success. Not through achievement. Through a tragedy that would test everything they believed about trust, friendship, and justice. For now, however, they simply enjoyed the peace of the evening. A peace that would soon disappear. Not far from Amina's home lived one of the wealthiest families in the region. The Okafor family. They owned businesses, land, properties, and held considerable influence throughout the community. People respected them. Sometimes feared them. Among them was a young businessman named Emeka. Unlike many wealthy men, Emeka seemed humble, polite, educated. Whenever he visited the village, people noticed. Especially young women. But Emeka rarely paid attention. Instead, he often stopped by Mama Grace's food stall. At first, he came as a customer. Then as a friend. Eventually, he and Amina became familiar with one another. Their conversations remained respectful. Simple. Harmless. Yet villagers quickly began speculating. Maybe they were interested in each other. Maybe a romance was developing. Amina ignored the rumors. She was focused on school. Focused on her future. Focused on helping her mother. But people love creating stories. Especially when they don't know the truth. And those rumors would soon become far more dangerous than anyone expected. Several months later, something unusual happened. Amina began feeling tired. Extremely tired. At first she blamed school. then stress, then long working hours. But the exhaustion continued. Soon other symptoms appeared. Nausea, dizziness, weakness. Mama Grace became worried. One morning she insisted they visit a clinic. Amina agreed. Neither expected anything serious. The clinic was quiet. The examination was routine. Hours later, the nurse returned with test results. The woman's expression looked strange. Confused. Concerned. Almost nervous. Amina. The nurse paused. Then carefully delivered unexpected news. The room became silent. Mama Grace stared at the nurse. Amina stared at the floor. Neither spoke. Neither moved. Because what they had just heard felt impossible. Completely impossible. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. And yet the test results sat there on the desk, refusing to disappear. Outside, life continued normally. People laughed. Cars passed. Children played. But inside that small clinic room, Amina's entire future had just changed. By the following week, whispers had begun. Nobody knew exactly how the information escaped the clinic. But somehow it did. One person told another. Then another. Then another. Within days, the entire village seemed to know. People stopped conversations when Amina walked past. Women exchanged worried looks. Men whispered quietly. Children repeated things they didn't understand. The rumors spread faster than facts. And as usually happens, each retelling made the story worse. Some claimed she had been secretly dating someone. Others claimed she had been living a double life. A few even invented outrageous stories with no evidence whatsoever. Amina watched her reputation collapse almost overnight. People who once praised her now avoided her. People who once admired her now questioned her character. The pain was unbearable. But even worse was knowing nobody wanted to hear her side. Nobody asked questions. Nobody searched for facts. They simply believed the rumors. And this was only the beginning. Because very soon, a hidden truth connected to one of the most powerful families in the village would start coming to light. And when it did, everything would change. Before the rumors, Amina couldn't walk through the village without hearing friendly greetings. People smiled. Children waved. Shopkeepers called her by name. But now everything felt different. The smiles disappeared. The greetings stopped. The warmth vanished. One morning, as Amina walked toward the market, she noticed women whispering near a fruit stand. The moment she approached, they became silent. A few seconds later, the whisper started again. Only quieter. Only crueler. Amina pretended not to notice. But she heard enough. Such a disappointment. Nobody expected this from her. Poor mother. Each sentence felt like a stone striking her heart. By afternoon, the rumors had spread even further. People who had never spoken to her suddenly had opinions about her life. People who knew nothing about her situation spoke with absolute confidence. Amina felt trapped. No matter where she went, eyes followed her. Judged her. Questioned her. Some people looked disappointed. Others looked angry. A few looked almost happy. As though they enjoyed watching someone fall. That evening she locked herself inside her room. Outside, the village continued talking. Inside, Amina cried quietly. Not because people were gossiping, but because nobody cared whether the rumors were true. The verdict had already been decided. And she hadn't even been allowed to defend herself. The next heartbreak came from the people she trusted most. Her friends. For years, Amina had supported them. Celebrated their achievements. Helped them through difficult times. Now she needed support. But support never came. Phone calls stopped. Messages went unanswered. Invitations disappeared. One afternoon, Amina saw three of her closest friends sitting together beneath a large mango tree. They noticed her immediately. For a moment she thought they would wave. Instead, they looked away. As if they didn't know her. As if she had become a stranger overnight. The rejection hurt more than the village gossip. Because strangers owe you nothing. Friends do. That evening Amina sat alone holding her phone. She scrolled through old photographs. Birthday celebrations. School memories. Happy moments. People who once promised to stand beside her forever. Now nowhere to be found. For the first time, she realized something important. Many people love you when life is easy. The real test comes when life becomes difficult. And unfortunately, many friendships fail that test. A week later, village elders organized a community meeting. Officially, it was about maintaining community values. Unofficially, everyone knew the real reason. Amina. The gathering attracted dozens of villagers. Men. Women. Parents. Community leaders. Even people from neighboring areas attended. Amina sat quietly beside her mother, trying to remain calm. Then the speeches began. Several speakers talked about responsibility, discipline, reputation, respect. Nobody mentioned Amina directly. Yet everyone knew who they were talking about. The atmosphere became increasingly uncomfortable. People glanced toward her repeatedly. Some shook their heads. Others looked disappointed. Mama Grace quietly held her daughter's hand. The older woman could feel Amina trembling. But neither left. Because leaving would look like guilt. And Amina refused to hide. Eventually one elder stood. He looked toward the audience. Then toward Amina. His expression softened. Before we judge anyone, we must remember that rumors are not facts. The statement surprised everyone. Including Amina. For the first time in weeks, someone had spoken with fairness. Someone had chosen truth over gossip. Yet the damage had already been done. Because once a reputation is attacked, repairing it becomes incredibly difficult. 2 days after the meeting, an unfamiliar vehicle stopped outside Mama Grace's house. The expensive SUV immediately attracted attention. Visitors like this rarely came to that part of the village. Amina stepped outside. So did her mother. Moments later, a middle-aged woman emerged from the vehicle. Elegant. Professional. Confident. Neither recognized her. The woman introduced herself politely. My name is Mrs. Okafor. Amina's heart skipped a beat. The Okafor family. The wealthy family everyone respected. The same family connected to Emeka. The woman looked nervous. As though she wanted to say something important. But wasn't sure how. After several moments of uncomfortable silence, she finally spoke. There are things happening that you don't understand. Amina frowned. What do you mean? The woman glanced around carefully, making sure nobody else could hear. Then she lowered her voice. Some very powerful people are trying to keep a secret. A chill ran through Amina's body. Because suddenly this situation felt much bigger than village gossip. Much bigger than rumors. And much more dangerous. Mrs. Okafor remained silent for several seconds. As if debating whether she should continue. Finally she spoke. Have you noticed how quickly the rumors spread? Amina nodded. Yes. The woman sighed. That's because someone wanted them to spread. The statement felt impossible. What? Mrs. Okafor looked directly into Amina's eyes. There are people who benefit when attention stays focused on you. The world suddenly felt very quiet. Amina could hear her own heartbeat. For weeks she believed she was simply the victim of unfortunate gossip. Now another possibility appeared. What if the rumors weren't accidental? What if someone had encouraged them? What if someone wanted the village talking about Amina, so they wouldn't ask questions about something else? Then Mrs. Okafor said a single name. A name connected to power, money, influence, and secrets. The name hit Amina like lightning. Because it belonged to someone she trusted. Someone the entire village respected. Someone nobody would ever suspect. And in that moment, Amina realized her nightmare was only beginning. That night, Amina couldn't sleep. Mrs. Okafor's words kept repeating in her mind. Someone wanted the rumors to spread. The statement changed everything. For weeks, Amina believed she was the victim of bad luck. Now she was beginning to suspect something much darker. Someone had benefited from the scandal. Someone had encouraged people to focus on her. Someone wanted the village discussing Amina instead of asking difficult questions. The more she thought about it, the more disturbing it became. Early the next morning, Mrs. Okafor returned. This time she looked even more nervous. She sat quietly inside Mama Grace's small living room. For several minutes nobody spoke. Finally Amina broke the silence. You said someone is hiding something. Mrs. Okafor nodded. Yes. What? The woman looked toward the window, as though she feared someone might be listening. Then she leaned closer. My family has been protecting a secret. The room became silent. Mama Grace exchanged a worried glance with her daughter. What secret? Mrs. Okafor hesitated. Then tears appeared in her eyes. One that could destroy everything. Amina felt her stomach tighten. Powerful families often had secrets. But the fear in Mrs. Okafor's voice suggested this one was serious. Very serious. And somehow it was connected to her. The question was why? Why would a wealthy family care about a young woman from a poor village? What possible connection could exist between them? As the morning sun filtered through the small windows, Amina sensed she was standing at the edge of a truth that would change her life forever. Later that afternoon, Mrs. Okafor arranged a private meeting. Not with a lawyer. Not with a politician. With a former house employee. An elderly man named Samuel. For over 20 years, Samuel had worked for the Okafor family. He knew their habits, their routines, their secrets. At first, Samuel seemed reluctant to speak. His hands trembled slightly. His eyes remained fixed on the floor. But eventually he looked at Amina and began talking. Several months earlier, he explained, he had witnessed a heated argument inside the Okafor mansion. The argument involved one of the family's young relatives. A man known for making reckless decisions. A man protected by wealth and influence. Samuel didn't reveal everything immediately. Instead he carefully described strange events. Private meetings. Unexpected payments. Conversations abruptly ending when employees entered rooms. The pieces didn't yet fit together. But one thing became clear. The Okafor family had been dealing with a crisis long before the rumors about Amina began. And someone had gone to great lengths to keep that crisis hidden. Amina listened carefully. For the first time, she felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. Because if someone was hiding the truth, then the truth existed. And truth has a way of eventually finding daylight. That evening, Mrs. Okafor handed Amina something unexpected. A small notebook. Old. Worn. Filled with handwritten entries. This belonged to my niece. Amina carefully opened it. Inside were personal thoughts, observations, concerns, and one recurring subject. A young man from the Okafor family. The more Amina read, the more uncomfortable she became. The journal described reckless behavior, poor decisions, attempts to avoid responsibility, and growing panic within the family. Several entries suggested powerful relatives were trying to protect someone from consequences. The final pages were especially troubling. One sentence stood out immediately. If the truth ever comes out, everyone will look for someone else to blame. Amina stared at the words again and again, because suddenly the rumors made more sense. The attacks, the whispers, the sudden scandal. What if they weren't random? What if they were distractions? What if somebody needed a public target? Someone vulnerable. Someone unable to defend herself. Someone whose reputation could be sacrificed to protect another person's future. Amina closed the journal slowly. For weeks she had been asking why this was happening. Now she was beginning to understand. The next day, Amina received an unexpected message. Emeka wanted to speak with her. Privately. At first she refused. She didn't trust anyone connected to the situation anymore. But eventually curiosity won. They met at a quiet location outside the village. Emeka looked exhausted. As though he hadn't slept properly in weeks. The confident businessman she remembered seemed different now. Worried. Burdened. Haunted. For several minutes neither spoke. Then Emeka finally broke the silence. Amina. His voice sounded heavy. I'm sorry. The apology surprised her. For what? Emeka lowered his eyes. For not speaking sooner. The statement immediately captured her attention. Not speaking about what? Amina waited. But Emeka seemed to be struggling with something. A difficult truth. A painful truth. A dangerous truth. Finally he looked directly at her. The rumors about you didn't happen by accident. Amina felt her pulse quicken. She already suspected as much. But hearing it confirmed changed everything. Then Emeka revealed something even more shocking. Several influential people had actively encouraged the gossip. Not because they hated Amina. Because they feared something else becoming public. Something that could damage their family forever. As the sun began setting, Emeka finally revealed the truth. Not every detail. Not yet. But enough. Enough to expose the heart of the scandal. A respected member of the Okafor family had made serious mistakes. Mistakes capable of destroying reputations. Mistakes capable of triggering public outrage. When concerns first appeared, powerful relatives panicked. Instead of confronting the issue honestly, they focused on protecting the family's image. Protecting their status. Protecting their influence. And while doing so, they allowed rumors about Amina to grow unchecked. Some even encouraged them. Because every conversation about Amina meant fewer questions about the real problem. The realization hit Amina like a storm. She wasn't merely the victim of gossip. She had become a shield. A distraction. A convenient target. Tears filled her eyes. Not because she felt weak. Because she finally understood how unfair everything had been. Weeks of humiliation. Weeks of loneliness. Weeks of public judgment. All because powerful people wanted to protect themselves. But the truth was finally emerging. And once the truth begins emerging, it becomes very difficult to stop. What Amina didn't know was that the biggest confrontation of her life was only days away. And the entire village was about to witness it. News travels quickly in small villages. Especially when powerful families are involved. Within days, rumors began spreading that a major community meeting would take place. Nobody knew exactly why. Nobody knew exactly who called it. But everyone sensed something important was about to happen. By Saturday afternoon, hundreds of villagers gathered in the community square. The atmosphere felt different. Tense. Heavy. Expectant. Amina arrived with her mother. As they walked through the crowd, people stared. Some looked ashamed. Others looked curious. Many simply looked confused. For weeks they had heard only one version of the story. Now whispers suggested another version existed. A much bigger version. At the front of the gathering sat village elders, community leaders, religious leaders, and members of the influential Okafor family. The sight alone made people nervous. Something serious was happening. As the meeting began, silence spread across the crowd. Even children stopped talking. Then the village chief stood. His voice carried across the square. Today we are here because truth matters. The crowd remained silent. For weeks, rumors have divided this community. Amina lowered her eyes. She could feel hundreds of people watching her. But for the first time, she wasn't afraid. Because she knew something they didn't. The truth was finally coming. And once it arrived, nothing would ever be the same. After the chief finished speaking, Mrs. Okafor stood. Gasps spread through the crowd. People immediately began whispering. The Okafor family rarely spoke publicly about personal matters. Yet here she was, standing before everyone. Her hands trembled slightly. But her voice remained steady. For weeks, an innocent person has carried a burden she did not deserve. The crowd became completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. Mrs. Okafor then revealed the existence of the journal. The witness. The private conversations. The efforts to redirect public attention. One by one, pieces of the puzzle emerged. Each revelation shocked the crowd. Many villagers exchanged uncomfortable looks. Because suddenly they realized something. They had accepted rumors without asking questions. They had judged someone without evidence. And now the evidence was appearing in front of them. The atmosphere changed immediately. People who once whispered accusations now looked embarrassed. Others looked angry. Not at Amina. At the people who had manipulated them. For the first time in weeks, the crowd's attention shifted away from Amina. Toward the people who had created the deception. And the biggest revelation had not even arrived yet. As tension filled the square, one member of the Okafor family slowly stood. The crowd immediately recognized him. A respected relative. A man whose reputation had remained untouched throughout the entire scandal. Until now. For several seconds he said nothing. His eyes remained fixed on the ground. Then he spoke. I should have told the truth sooner. The crowd froze. The statement hit like thunder. Silence covered the square. The man admitted that mistakes had been made inside the family. Serious mistakes. Mistakes they had tried to handle privately. Mistakes they feared would damage their reputation. Instead of facing the situation honestly, some family members had allowed attention to drift elsewhere. Toward rumors. Toward gossip. Toward Amina. No one had directly ordered the village to attack her. But nobody had stopped it either. And sometimes silence causes just as much harm as lies. The confession continued. Each sentence made the crowd more uncomfortable. Because everyone understood the same thing. Amina had become a convenient target. Not because she deserved it. Because she was easy to blame. The realization was painful. Especially for those who had helped spread the rumors. As the meeting continued, people began remembering their own actions. The whispers. The gossip. The assumptions. The judgment. One woman remembered warning her daughter not to speak with Amina. Another remembered repeating rumors at the market. Several men recalled discussing her situation as though they knew the facts. Now shame began replacing certainty. Because truth has a way of exposing not only the people who create lies, but also the people who choose to believe them. An elderly woman slowly stood from the crowd, then walked toward Amina. Everyone watched. The woman stopped in front of her and apologized. The gesture stunned the entire village. Moments later, another person apologized. Then another. Then another. The crowd began changing. Not all at once, but slowly. People were finally seeing Amina as a person again. Not a rumor. Not a scandal. Not a headline. A person. A young woman whose life had been deeply damaged by assumptions. Tears filled Amina's eyes. Not because the pain disappeared. Because for the first time, she felt seen. As the sun began setting behind the village, the meeting finally ended. But before people left, the village chief made one final statement. A lesson must be learned from this. Everyone listened. We judged before understanding. The crowd remained silent. We listened to rumors before seeking facts. More silence. And an innocent person suffered because of it. The chief then turned toward Amina. For weeks she had carried humiliation, fear, loneliness, and public judgment. Now, for the first time, those burdens began lifting. Not completely. Healing would take time. Trust would take time. But the truth had finally emerged. And truth has power. As villagers slowly walked home, conversations sounded different. No longer filled with accusations. Now filled with reflection, regret, and understanding. Amina stood beside her mother watching the crowd leave. Mama Grace squeezed her hand. Neither woman spoke. They didn't need to. Because after weeks of darkness, light had finally returned. But one final chapter still remained. The chapter where Amina rebuilds her future, finds unexpected happiness, and discovers that sometimes life's greatest blessings arrive after its greatest storms. The weeks following the community meeting were not easy. Although the truth had finally come out, the pain did not disappear overnight. Amina still remembered the whispers, the accusations, the judgment. Some wounds heal slowly, especially wounds caused by people you once trusted. Yet something inside her had changed. Before, she walked through the village feeling ashamed. Now she walked with quiet confidence. Not because everything was perfect. Because she knew the truth. And when a person knows the truth about themselves, other people's opinions lose much of their power. One morning, while helping her mother prepare food for the market, Mama Grace smiled. It was the first genuine smile Amina had seen on her mother's face in months. You look different. Amina laughed. Different how? Stronger. The answer surprised her. But deep down, she knew it was true. The storm had changed her. Not destroyed her. Changed her. For weeks she had asked why such painful things happened to her. Now she was beginning to ask a different question. What could she learn from them? And that question would change her future forever. A month later, Amina received an unexpected phone call. The caller was the principal of a respected school in a nearby town. At first she thought there must be some mistake. But there wasn't. The principal had heard about her tutoring work. He had heard about her dedication to education. And surprisingly, he had also heard about the way she handled the recent crisis. A lot of people would have responded with anger, he told her. You responded with dignity. The words touched her deeply. Then came an offer. The school needed an assistant teacher. It wasn't a permanent position. But it was an opportunity. The opportunity Amina had dreamed about for years. When the call ended, tears filled her eyes. Not tears of sadness. Tears of relief. For months it felt as though every door in her life had closed. Now one was opening. And sometimes one open door is all a person needs. That evening she shared the news with her mother. Mama Grace cried harder than Amina. Because after everything they had endured, hope was finally returning. One afternoon, as Amina returned from work, she saw someone waiting outside her house. At first she couldn't believe it. It was one of the women who had spread the harshest rumors. The woman looked nervous, ashamed, uncomfortable. For several moments neither spoke. Then the woman lowered her head. "I came to apologize." Amina remained silent. The woman continued. "I hate you." Tears appeared in her eyes. "I believe stories without knowing the facts." The apology sounded sincere. Painfully sincere. Amina listened quietly. Months earlier, she would have imagined this moment differently. She imagined anger, revenge, bitterness. But standing there now, she felt something unexpected. Peace. Because carrying resentment had become exhausting. Finally she smiled gently. "I forgive you." The woman began crying immediately. Not because forgiveness erased the past. Because forgiveness gave both of them permission to move forward. That afternoon marked the beginning of many similar conversations. One by one, people came. One by one, apologies followed. And slowly the village began healing. 6 months later, life looked completely different. Amina had become one of the most respected young teachers in the region. Students loved her. Parents trusted her. Colleagues admired her determination. Most importantly, she finally believed in herself again. The fear that once controlled her had disappeared. One afternoon after class, she stood watching children play in the schoolyard. Their laughter filled the air. For a moment she remembered the darkest days. The loneliness. The rumors. The tears. And she realized something extraordinary. If those painful experiences had never happened, she might never have discovered how strong she truly was. Strength is easy to admire. Much harder to earn. Amina had earned hers. Not through success. Not through comfort. Through survival. Through courage. Through refusing to give up when everything seemed hopeless. As she watched the children running across the field, a quiet smile appeared. Her future no longer frightened her. For the first time in a long time, it excited her. 1 year after the scandal, the village held its annual celebration. Families gathered. Music played. Children laughed. The atmosphere felt joyful. During the event, the village chief invited Amina to speak. She was surprised. Nervous. But she accepted. Standing before hundreds of people, she looked across the crowd. Many faces were familiar. Some had supported her. Others had once judged her. Today, none of that mattered. She smiled. Then began speaking. "A year ago, many people believed they knew my story. The crowd listened carefully. But they only knew rumors. Silence filled the gathering. Rumors almost destroyed my future. Many people lowered their eyes. But they also taught me something important." She paused. "The truth may walk slowly." The crowd remained silent. But eventually, it arrives. Tears filled several eyes, including Mama Grace's. Amina smiled. "And when it arrives, it reveals who stood with you, and who didn't." The crowd erupted into applause. As the sun set over the village, people stood together watching. Older. Wiser. Changed. Because sometimes the greatest lesson isn't about betrayal. It's about refusing to let betrayal define your future. And as Amina looked toward the horizon, she knew one thing for certain. The chapter of pain was over. The chapter of purpose had finally begun.